Hello and welcome to another episode of the Proof of Claim podcast. I'm your host, Todd Price, and I'm joined again with Anil Bharrat. And today we've got the pleasure of Kurt Wuckert Jr. joining us as the chief Bitcoin historian and many other hats that cover his hairless head. Welcome, Kurt.
It's good to be here, Todd. Anil, good to meet you. Todd, good to see you again.
Yeah, totally. So for those who don't know, I don't know if there's anyone who doesn't know who Kurt is that is watching our show, but Kurt has been around in Bitcoin for a very long time, and he's been active in the restoration of Bitcoin, the original Bitcoin protocol, and he's been fighting the good fight for a long time, and not only fighting the good fight, but doing a lot of things that actually make a difference and building tools, building businesses, sharing information. So he's a real asset to the team, and it's a pleasure to have him with us. And yeah, looking forward to what we're going to get into today.
Me too.
Yeah, so I originally reached out in response to one of your posts. This is probably about a month ago now on X, and I saw that you were promoting Gorilla Pool, and I was thinking to myself, it'd be really cool to have you on the show, and at least I know you got your weekly CoinGeek Weekly live show, but it would be great to at least give you that opportunity to do a little bit more promotion for yourself. And so
Sure.
I'd love to dive in and number one, just learn a little bit more about what you do. And I know that a lot of viewers are already in the space and they're really into like everything that we're going to be talking about, but I also kind of want you to explain it from the perspective of people outside of this space. Like, what does Gorilla Pool do? Give a little bit more context for people outside of the space. Why is Bitcoin special? And what's the vision behind Gorilla Pool and that sort of thing. So yeah, if you could kind of start from there, I think that would be a good starting point.
I love it. I tell everybody, when I'm off the cuff, I tell everybody that every good discussion should start with determining presuppositions. And if you don't know somebody's worldview or why they're doing something, and most people don't know why they themselves are doing things, and so they just kind of do things, and then they're surprised at the outcome. So I love this because for me, I look at Bitcoin fundamentally as an opportunity to make the world smaller. And it's just one of those technologies where, if it was 1500 and I was living in Germany where my ancestors were from, we'd all be like, man, I'd really like to read a book, but it would cost me like half a year's salary to buy one. And so that sucks. And, then the printing press was invented, and then movable type. And then it turned books into the kind of thing where like, hey, now we can go buy books easily. I can learn all kinds of things by myself. And then it brought up the level of the culture. And then, you had telephones or telegraphs or, these things that made it like, oh, wow, now I can live in Omaha, Nebraska and communicate to my family that I left in New York 5 years ago who don't know if I'm alive or dead, but I can send a telegraph message or whatever, And then the internet, we've lived in the internet age for like 25 years now. And that's been a lot of good and a lot of bad too. And just like everything else, it's the culture that defines how well a tool is used. And then Bitcoin is that next big jump in communications technology. And the money aspect of it, we could talk about for 5 hours. Like why fixing money makes the world a better place. But at some point in the last 10 years, I realized that Bitcoin is not just about fixing the money, but that data is actually the anchored value that is locked up that nobody knows how to access, or almost nobody, but the people who do access it, like this is all the billionaires that have made themselves billionaires in the last 20 years have done it in the data economy. Like it's Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey or Elon Musk. They've figured out that data is money. And if they can control the silo of the data, they can control almost everything. But Bitcoin democratizes that. Like not just the ability to like send money from Toledo to Tokyo really simply, but also the ability to like bypass predatory OAuth, which is something like log in with X, log in with Google, log in with, Facebook, which I think is deprecated now because they were selling secrets to like the CIA and Mossad or whatever. But when you look at how much control just logging in with some other database that you don't know the nature of the data that you're sharing when you log in, like just turning that into Bitcoin keys is like a huge step in the right direction for human sovereignty and the ability to self-determine all kinds of other outcomes. And that can be as simple as, hey, let me in this nightclub because this QR code says I'm allowed to be here because of my age or whatever. But it's also as much as, you can pay me for my data that you're scraping for free right now, but you're not scraping it for free anymore. You have to pay me if you're going to use my data, and all that data can be attested to on the blockchain. And so for me, the whole journey of why I do anything in Bitcoin really is based on giving people all the power back that they don't know that they lost, and then also liberating the money such that you're not like losing purchasing power to inflation and all the other stuff that all your typical small blocker Bitcoiners talk about. Like that is an important thing, but there's so much other stuff that is completely ignored that Bitcoin is actually capable of, and it might be more important than the money. It used to be fix the money, fix the world, but it really it's fix the data, fix the world. Money is just a subset of data, and so that's why I'm here. That's what I'm passionate about, and it's so important.
But you sort of have that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Todd.
Oh, there's like the pyramid of data, then information, then knowledge, then wisdom, and really like wisdom is the value of the knowledge and how to apply it and such. So you're moving up through it into turning it into the value and the utility. And so if you can make that have integrity the whole way through that wisdom stack or the utility of knowledge, then that's, there's trillions. That's the only way that you can actually get out of the money funk as well, is turning stuff that's not actually currently being measured or not accurate, and bringing all that into an economic marketplace, being able to monetize small amounts of it, granularly price certain data over others. That would be the way that you capture a whole bunch of value that didn't previously exist. And you don't just have to be more productive to pay off this like insurmountable debt. You can actually make new value by just measuring new stuff.
Grow the pie.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is like, I think about the 2, 3, 4 billion people on Earth that don't have practical access to the global economy right now. It's like, how many of those guys would create a 10,000x efficiency in some portion of the economy, which would then grow the pie and make it that like, hey, our $50 trillion global debt's not actually that big of a problem because we're going to outgrow, or like we're going to be more productive than the debt. Like right now, that's not the case. But with adding billions of more people, maybe 1% of 4 billion people are going to be world-class entrepreneurs, but out of 4 billion people, 1% that's a big number of people that can create a ton of value. And so that's the other thing that Bitcoin really unlocks. And I want to live in a world that's got that many more, brilliant entrepreneurs creating new economic models.
Yeah, there's an economist, I think he's from the 60s or something, Robert Solow, and he said that 80% of all economic all value is created through innovation from science and engineering and such. So and innovation, Dan Robles, who we had on the show a couple of weeks ago, he defines innovation as like faster than average accumulation of knowledge over time. So when you're getting more intelligence and building that that knowledge stack or that wisdom stack, you're innovating, and then you're generating economic value because you're just using things more efficiently, or you're making new use of things that you couldn't formerly. And that's exciting to me as well. And the idea of like everyone being able to participate. There's a team that are doing some cool stuff with food and food security, and they're saying, why shouldn't a farmer in Uganda who has like an excellent way of mitigating pestilence on a crop be able to monetize that to the world and stop a plague in Nebraska or something like that.
I wrote recently about global genetic data. Like, we have a lot of genetic diversity on the planet, but only people in the northwestern hemisphere do anything with it. Like, people join 23andMe and be like, oh wow, I have this genetic anomaly that's interesting. But again, there's 8, 9, 10 billion people on this planet, and how many people are like completely resistant to cancer or completely resistant to like all kinds of these other things, who could then monetize the value of their genetic data if they could tokenize it and make it that they don't just get killed by Pfizer or Glaxo or something, but then actually practically say, hey, I'm going to lease out my genetic information to a company to synthesize some kind of a therapy or a vaccine or whatever else, to then get rid of like all of these other problems that are plaguing people in other parts of the world and stuff. And so there's like lots of little things like that where, like, hey, we can make this a much better place to live if we can give people the power of their own data. And there is no more amazing database than your own genetics. Your own body is a tremendous hard drive of information, and it is individually unique to every one of us. And so across those 10 billion people, there's amazing stuff that if we could record it, catalog it, index it, and then potentially monetize it in a way that it could then be commercialized, which sounds a little bit abrasive or vain. We like, let's monetize your genes. But for people that have a valuable genetic code, that's the kind of thing where like, how many people would pay to be like, hey, I have a variant that makes me XYZ more prone to getting some kind of cancer, but if I can buy the information from this person that's completely immune to it, like adding in things like CRISPR and some of these other therapies and stuff, like you start to create these industries that didn't exist before, and you bring up the quality of everyone's life, and it's tremendous. Like pure, unadulterated free markets make incredible things.
So you started off by saying that Bitcoin has the ability to fix the money, but also has this entirely other side of it, which is the data side. And so I'm curious, maybe this goes a little bit into a bit of your origin story with Bitcoin, but for you, where did you start to discover like, hey, this is more than just like sound money, but there's this whole other opportunity? When did you discover that?
2015, actually. So I've always been a sound money guy. Sound money is one of those things that really matters to me. But it was always like commodities, but not just like most guys would be like, so I got into gold and silver and that's my thing. And like I'm also that, but everything is a commodity. So including your ideas or whatever else. Like there's lots of little things that are commodities. And the first time that I realized that tokenization of that kind of stuff was possible on a blockchain, it started with forget the name of the token protocol now. It is completely out of my head, but it was one of the reasons that Luke Jr. Turned off the op return size or cut the op return size way down, and it killed off a couple of major Bitcoin companies. And one was this token protocol, which, why can't I think of it? It was a colored coin protocol. Yeah. I don't know. It'll occur to me in like half an hour. I'll remember
Sure.
it. But I heard that and I was like, oh my God, like that's the thing. Like if each sat could also be a representative value of any other thing, then Bitcoin is not just as valuable as Bitcoin. It's as valuable as Bitcoin and whatever else is tokenized on it, which is everything. And so like people don't realize that most of the value in the world for the last 1,000 years has actually been tokens, because fiat cash are tokens. Like fiat cash represents some other value. So does stock. So does every single derivative of every other asset. They're all just tokens fundamentally. And if all of those tokens can be on one network, like we're not just talking about billions, that can be done. Like we were talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars of value that can be all utilized in a single substrate. And like to me, so in 2015, when I realized Bitcoin tokens were a thing, especially using sats as tokens, I was just like, oh my God, like this is it. This is the thing that is going to change the entire world. And I have been unequivocally committed ever since. Like I was already into Bitcoin. I was mining it, but it was pretty casual and all of that. Like 2012, 13, 14 era, like thought Bitcoin was cool because I thought of it as like digital gold and a cash system, and all of that is very cool. That's a huge innovation. But when I realized tokens were a thing, I was just like, this is it. Like we have to get everybody tokenizing everything on Bitcoin. And then Luke Dash Jr. turning it off and killing tokenization because spam and all of, like, I was just like, that man is the devil. Like he is setting the world back by generations every moment he is allowed to influence Bitcoin. And so for me, that's when the Bitcoin Civil War started for me. It was like, we have to get rid of this entire small blocker ideology, because we're all going to be stuck in a prison until that ideology is laughed out of the room and we take over with what Bitcoin is really meant to do.
That's so interesting because, I think the way that they're framing, let's say big blocker or tokens or anything other than money, financial transactions on a blockchain is, well, number one, it's spam, but then they frame it around like, the bad, the worst of the worst, right? So that you associate, I don't want to say it, so, but you associate that with big block Bitcoin. And so, so unfortunate.
Yeah, they're very, very good at narrative creation and then repetition. The social engineering, like they are masters of it, which begs a bunch of questions about where they came from. But
right. So tell us about Gorilla Pool. How did it come to be? Was your vision with tokenization, like, did that kind of sort of feed into Gorilla Pool? What's sort of the story behind starting that, and when did it start? And
initially, it wasn't the primary driver. A big one was actually all the people complaining about TAL. And like BSV is amazing, but there's a lot of people working in BSV that just don't get it. Like they think it's cool for one reason or another, but they're not looking at the big picture. And then, and these people are everywhere. These people work at every one of the companies you've ever heard of in BSV. There are people that really get it, and there are people that do not get it at all, and they're there for a paycheck or whatever. And to the people that like to just sit on Twitter and bellyache about stuff, like those people drive me nuts, because it's like, sure, like you might be right, but what are you doing about it other than, bitching about it or, reminding me that I'm bald or whatever else, and but then the people complaining about TAL, which admittedly there's plenty of things to criticize about TAL and the decisions they've made and whatever. And I looked at it and said, okay, I can jump on the bandwagon and say, well, if I was running a mining pool, I'd do X, Y, and Z. And instead, I was mining anyways. And I talked to Root, who is my co-founder today. But I said, dude, what would it take for us to spin up? Like, I know you're running some infrastructure and stuff right now. What would it take to take some of the hash power that's available and then, but also use it as a way to drive like community engagement? Because I think a lot of people, especially in the era, this was like 2021 and 2022, a lot of people basically just like following Craig around and just like, oh, Craig's gonna do this and Craig's gonna do that, and then we're all gonna be rich.
1,200.
Right. And then and that always also ticked me off. I'm just like, man, I am just not going to sit and encourage Craig and pray to Craig and all of this stuff. And but there weren't a lot of practical ways for people to just get involved in something simple. And so it's like, okay, I want to do a couple things. Like, we'll build our own pool, so we're mining blocks, and that'll be our contribution to the network. But then also I want to facilitate people's ability to buy an ASIC rig and get paid out in virgin BSV that's mined by the pool. And if somebody really cares, spend $5,000, buy a rig or two, contribute to the proof of work, then you can, then at the very least, your stupid opinion on Twitter cost you $5,000. And I can say, you know what? They might be an idiot or they might be a jagoff, but also they are contributing this chunk as a percentage to the reputation and the value, and it just giving people a little bit of buy-in to the system also changes your position in it. I know all of us are fathers, right? It's I have a lot of opinions about things that are now, as a dad, realize my opinion on that thing is wrong. And your children, just having responsibility, having stake in things changes your motivations and all of this stuff. And so that was a big part of it too, is okay, have people, give them a vehicle to contribute to BSV meaningfully, and then also have a good time. Like that's why all of our marketing is like gorillas and apes and just weird memes and all that stuff. Is way too many people want to like put a suit on and join Wall Street, all this stuff. Like Bitcoin used to be very punk rock and now it is very corporate. And I don't ever want to be that guy. Like I always want to be the guy that shows up in like a neon pink shirt and just says like, hey man, I changed the world and I didn't have to compromise anything about myself to do it. There you go, Todd.
Yeah. We were just talking about that before the show.
and so that was a big part of it too, is like, man, we have to make a like stake a claim and say, you know what, we're going to contribute a lot and we're going to do it without losing our personality, losing our fun, and without making Bitcoin have to compromise and turn into this whole other thing. Like Bitcoin is cool because it's Bitcoin, and we're going to be ourselves with it and try to lead the culture with it too. And so it's also that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people that like BSV needs to do this and BSV needs to do that, and you're saying, who is BSV? Like, who are you talking about? What you just saying? You like, are you saying Calvin needs to do this, or are you saying Craig needs, or the BA needs to do this? The BA doesn't do everything. They've got a particular set of sort of things that are in scope for them. And if they wanted to do everything, people would be having a fit that they're trying to do everything.
That's a problem too. That was wrong.
You just can't win. But people just expect like someone that there's an entity that can fix things, or BSV should be all into this. And you're like, well, then start a business in it. Like that's pretty much the only real way to make any difference that's like legitimate and that doesn't come down from a top-down pipeline.
Right.
Is
exactly
add some value,
right. Well, that's one of our major slogans, and we've printed this on shirts and whatever, is don't whine about it, mine about it. And
right.
Be productive. And then your opinion matters too. Like you can go talk to BA or whatever and say, hey, I mine with Gorilla Pool, I do this and that, I contribute in this way, and therefore my opinion, like, can you take my opinion, please? As opposed to I'm some jerk on the internet, and I don't like your logo, I don't like your spokesperson, I don't like the words you used in the GitHub, whatever, Yeah.
But that's just the nature of these things. Hey, we're just lumped in with everyone else, and you're like, somehow at least we have a protocol that we think is fixed, and we work towards on that, because otherwise then it's just gets real messy. If you don't have a protocol and you're just like, we're a movement and we all hate each other and we can't agree on any common definitions, then but
a rabble. I think it's just a rabble at that point.
How do you think the rabble's going on the small block world? Is it theatrics, or is it actual anything happening?
I don't know. Like Knots versus Core and all that. Like there was part of me, because Knots isn't new, for one. Knots has been around for a long time, and I don't know, just all of a sudden that it turned into what it turned into. Like, I'm of the opinion, if you look into the backgrounds of the people on both sides, like their paychecks are all coming from the same people. So I'm a little bit like, all right, this is some kind of kabuki theater going on. And so I think it's at least as likely that it's all fake versus, that they actually are having a civil war. Obviously, some people really do have opinions about it.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that's the mid-level people and down, like your cultural stuff. I think the people that are actually leading this, like, I don't know, they're all very deceptive people. And so if we break it down into like Jameson Lopp and Adam Back and whatever versus Luke and some of his like grass-fed Bitcoin and some of those guys, like they're all, I don't know. Maybe it's a civil war, like, brothers grow to hate each other sometimes, but I still think the checks are coming from the same pillars of power to both sides. And so I think it's a little bit like, it's decentralized. They bickered for 9 months about a thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, problem, reaction, solution kind of a thing. Hey.
Yes. Very Hegelian. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, I
that was-
cut you off before, and I sort of cut you off before Anil. So
No,
yeah.
no worries. So where was I going with this? You had mentioned about, getting started and how you wanted to contribute, but like for most people that are not, devs, it's pretty difficult for them. Like there's really nothing. That's why I was, we haven't published it yet. It's just because of me. I haven't published the episode that we did with money, but it's coming, I promise. But I was really happy with, like what they're coming up with, and I can already see like ways people can somewhat get involved with them if they wanted to be somewhat of a distributor of some kind. I could see that as an opportunity potentially. But like, let's talk about like Gorilla Pool. Like if I wanted to, you said somebody could just pick up a miner and like, or two and start mining, but I don't know how practical that is just because I don't know, but maybe you could shed some light on that. And then also I know I did visit your website, and I saw that you had like, the ability for people to get in and into a mining pool with you. So could you maybe like plug, this is your opportunity to plug Gorilla Pool, but really like explain a little bit about like what can people do on the hardware side if they wanted to, I guess, become a sort of like a miner, and then what if they just wanted to join a mining pool that you have or something? Could you share a little bit more about that?
So Gorilla Pool facilitates allowing anybody to jump in and mine with us. So we have our node that is connected to the network and announcing blocks, and then we have the pool, which is another piece of software connected to it that takes the essentially a hash table template, and it splits it into shares. And so however many people involve themselves in each block, whatever your percentage share is of each block is what you will end up getting paid out. And so that is the most basic way to describe what a pool is doing and what we do on BSV. But we also offer a physical hosting opportunity. So we have locations in Iowa, Wisconsin, and Quebec, Canada. And so if you wanted to buy an ASIC and host it anywhere else, like that's fine. You can point it at Gorilla Pool and you are mining BSV directly to your wallet. But if you don't want to get that far, you can just say, Kurt, how much is it for me to buy an ASIC? The Bitmain Antminer S21, what do they call it now? They're 270 terahash per second. And that machine, it's like the size of a shoebox and costs about $5,000. And we will put it on a rack in a data center that we control. We will connect it to your wallet for you. And all you have to do is pay your electric bill to us every month, which shakes out to between $200 and $225 a month per machine. And it will pay out.
I'm surprised because I don't feel like that's extremely.
It's not that
what
much
am I
money.
missing here? What am I missing here? What am I missing here?
So, I mean, you're not missing anything. It really is that simple. I guess the catch is that it is right around break even on a month-to-month basis. So the ROI on the machine kind of looks like never, but that assumes that the price of the asset never changes or that the size of the block never changes. So like right now, you will never pay that machine off. So if you buy that machine and pay your electric bill, you are losing money and going backwards. However, when BSV goes to $1,200 and the average block size is 90 gigabytes, then you're making gangbusters money with the thing. And you're like, man, I wish I bought 20 of these things instead of just one. And so that's the gamble. That's the speculation part of it. But in a basic sense, I mean, if you were to literally wire me $5,000 and then sign a contract to pay $220 a month for the next 12 months, you start earning virgin BSV. Like we give you the BSV that we mine directly out of the block and it goes straight to your wallet. There's no pool of soiled coins that we're dragging from to pay you out of or anything like that. And so you're getting the coins that you mine and they're yours. They go directly to you. We never custody them. And that's it. That's the whole business model that we make. For us, it's, we're making a little bit of a profit on the cost of the electricity and some of the other things, and a small markup on the value of the ASIC that we are selling you. But all of that's pretty minimal because we're kind of doing the same thing. Like we want to grow the pie, because growing the pie, like we're trying to be the primary builders of the pie. So like make the pie bigger, get people involved, get people doing these things, and it's just good for everybody.
So you
Got it.
spoke
That makes
as,
sense.
if you're a pie grower, I've heard you say you are looking to be a Web3 ISP, which sounds good, like good marketing phrase. But well, I guess what does that actually mean? Or as much as you can say, like who have you got your eyes on knocking off the throne or something?
So right now, if you want to get involved in building a blockchain application, typically you're going to have to download a node client, and then you're going to have to host it somewhere. And this is for every blockchain except BSV. You can also do this on BSV, but if you're trying to rely on a node that you're hosting in the cloud, you got all kinds of problems. But like if you were to do, build an Ethereum app or a Polygon app or a Solana app or whatever, like you need to connect to a node. Now that's a lot easier in every other blockchain except BSV. And so I looked at the situation and said, okay, how do we make it that we can stream data to just the people that need it? Like who does that? And then it occurred to me, this is exactly my relationship with Comcast here in the US. Like when I moved to my house, I need access to the internet. And so I have to say, hey, Comcast, can you connect me to the internet? And they come bring a little piece of hardware into my house and they connect it. And then I forget it exists until it needs to be upgraded in 3 years or whatever. And so, I just have this little modem router Wi-Fi thing going on in my house. And I realized, like, why aren't mining pools doing the same thing? Like, we are the network. My node is a participant in the network. We have all the data. And so if we create systems that then allow people to just access the information they want, then it makes it easier for them to build an application because they don't have to be like a network DevOps, like do all this stuff. Like you shouldn't have to need to be a systems admin before you become an app developer or an entrepreneur. And so it's like, okay, so let's cut that part of it out. Say, hey, here's Jungle Bus. It's free. It works kind of like a modem does in your house. You say, okay, just give me my token. So money, for example, they only care about money tokens on one sat ordinals. And so for them, they don't want to run a full node. They don't want to listen to all the other tokens in the universe. All that. They just care about money. And so, okay, make it very easy for money to only do the stuff that they need to do with the money token. And so they get to run a really light index on their end that just serves their customers. And then with that, I realized, well, that can be extrapolated out into anything else. Anybody that wants to build a social network or anybody that wants to build a data aggregation thing or build an IoT app or whatever, they only care about their UTXOs, their Bitcoins. They only care about their tokens. They only care about their data. And so I started saying, like, okay, we're not a mining operation. Don't think about us like you'd think of Foundry Pool or Riot Blockchain or Marathon. Like, nobody even knows what mining actually means. So is it this weird industrial process, or is it people like, illegally farming electricity from some dam in the middle of nowhere in the third world? Or is it that, Infura, like what are all these things? Like, you know what? Nobody needs to know. I don't know how Comcast works. I know there's little switches around the neighborhood or whatever else, but I don't need to know all that infrastructure stuff. I just need my modem in my house. And so we have tried to bring our business model down to saying, like, look, you want to connect to Bitcoin? Connect to Bitcoin through this little tiny piece of software. We'll handle all the hardware stuff. And now you can build your app. Now you can do whatever you want on the metanet. And now the rest is up to you. You have no excuse that, like, I don't know, I couldn't figure out how to download the client. I didn't have enough hard drive space to sync the chain. I didn't have, and you shouldn't. And so I see the business model really being exactly that. I think the big mining companies of right now are either going to move that direction or they're going to end up losing because they're only thinking about the subsidy. We have a very subsidy-based economy built in the entire blockchain space, and we're trying to push forward into the, like, hey, you need to be a business that performs actual services for actual customers, or else we all fail. And so that's what I'm trying to build. I'm trying to change that paradigm and have people think of a company like Gorilla Pool the exact same way you might think of Verizon or T-Mobile or Vodafone or whoever, like the people that give you the data that you care about so that you can participate in the economy.
But then like a Web3 ISP is going to, it's got access to, or if you're based around a mining farm, you're based around a whole heap of like computational resources, like that node that's doing terabyte blocks or whatever has some serious capabilities. So is there an ambition to offer compute and some of the other things as well as just the sort of the network connectivity?
So that's one of the other things that we're considering. I look at the way that people are doing stuff right now, and it's like I basically just keep asking, like, why do people have to keep going back to Web 2? What are they going back to Web 2 for? And the next one in my mind is Amazon Web Service, AWS, or people use OVH or Hetzner or any number of hosting providers. And I look at that and say, well, we could also do that. Like, we're also running bare metal servers and all these things. And so what if we were also your cloud provider for your front end? Because in this new paradigm, people are building overlay networks, and they're trying to keep abstracting away the problems in Bitcoin, but everybody's still very content to be like, well, and then I got my Amazon bill to pay and whatever. And it's like, well, why doesn't that also get paid into the system? Like, we shouldn't have to be accessing the legacy internet for anything if we can help it. And so what I want to do is have Gorilla Pool over the next year or so, really, and by the end of 2026, I would really like to only be using the internet for people that just want to use a web browser to jump in and use the services. But I want all of the internal infrastructure to really be internal to the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I think that's where a lot of the value is going to come from. Like, we've been talking about MetaNet now for at least 5 years. And like, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to have an internet built over Bitcoin? Well, it looks like that. It looks like you don't ever leave the Bitcoin node network. And I don't just mean the blockchain and the peer-to-peer network and all that stuff. I mean all of it. And so that's got to be thought out. And it's something we're thinking really hard about.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways of that. Like, if you really move into peer-to-peer, own your own data, like, people, when we're talking about, they say genetic information before, no one's going to like import their genetic CSV file onto their own machine and have their data around that and their data around all the other things. They use apps and they use services, and those apps, they are generally hosted somewhere. And there's, if you've got the ledgers 100% of all actions, then an app that might be genetic SV or whatever, with and that deals with a subset and offers services, and it has the data, and people can interact with that service in a peer-to-peer fashion and track their own UTXOs and have their derivation paths and such sort of on their side. And so they kind of have a silo, but the silo is kind of written in, like triplicate carbon paper, where the individual can go and take everything from them out of the silo, move it elsewhere, but the copy still exists in the silo as well. So then they get to leverage that for the acting like a bit of a data broker. So when you're saying, oh, I can take my genetic data voluntarily to market, it's not, you don't have to be like, send an envelope of your data from your machine to the advertisers or to the scientific study. It would come through like an API interface, or like you as a data broker, or Genetic SV as a data broker would say, hey, do you consent to the release of this subset of your sleep data or your something or other? And it's like, yeah, great. And then the money comes back in, and they get to get a bit of cream from facilitating that. But and people go, oh, no middleman, but you don't want to be dealing with every single service provider and taking all your data to market. You want people to like have analytics and concentrate data so they can understand the value of it, and then it's more attractive to a marketer or to a scientific study to come and peel it out from there and get the opportunity to a push notification
Correct.
saying de-release or something. So I see you guys like you're providing the stack and you're providing the the container, the sort of subset of the network or the new territory of the network that's going to be brokering that, but there probably will be other ways of doing things that are a little bit outside of that, or a metanet flavored approach, or the different different backends. Right. I guess I've sort of been not just toying with these ideas and mucking around with things, and I keep coming back to that like identity solution. Like you're talking about OAuth before and something seamless. Like, do you have like, say AWS has that nightmare IAM service, and like if you're talking like multi-tenancy and such on your machines, do you have something like that you guys are working on to?
We do. It's almost done, and we think it's going to be one of the really big aspects of what we're building. It's called Sigma Identity. We also call it Sigma Auth. And part of it is based on this notion of being a Sigma male. And for those that don't know what a Sigma male is, it's somebody. It's kind of like an alpha male, but they have no ego
DGAF.
About the way that exactly. They're just like, I am tougher than everybody. I need no one, and anyone who is wise would follow me. But I'm also not asking you to follow me. And so it's like the next step in masculinity, essentially. So this is where the name Sigma comes from. It also was based on an idea that we kicked around with Siggy Oscarson many years ago, and so the logo is actually a silhouette of Siggy's head. And I don't know if he knows this or not.
That's
but but part of why we created is you're absolutely right. Like, you have to have an identity protocol as part of all these things. But I'm a big believer in building things out as schemas. Very, very simple. Publish them on chain, and then there's a bucket there for is this a genome data thing, and so publish it into here, and you publish it encrypted, and then you can also offer it as a like a partially signed Bitcoin transaction or whatever else, and say, hey, if you want to access it, like, pay. It's for sale right here, and if it's valuable to you, pay me for it, and it's very, very simple to do. But it's the network effect thing, right? It's like, well, if there's only 8 people that are offering their genes on the system, then it's not a very valuable system. So you need to find ways to bring more people into it. And so I'm a big believer, actually, that identity is one of those major things. It's really simple. I think a lot of people realize that, hey, signing into a thing, using a thing does lose me a lot of my data sovereignty. And so there's a couple of startups out there that have recently been acquired by some very big companies. Actually, Square just acquired one of the major blockchain-based ones. I can't remember if it was Clerk or Privy, but both do a similar thing. Where it's like self-sovereign, like on your system, like it's your computer's keys that are logging into the thing and whatever else. So using the cryptography in a way that is more private. But Sigma is what we're developing. It'll be out very soon. I don't know exactly our release path on that, but it's a whole set of information that explains how to keep your data sovereign but use it as an identity system, and then identity, like key rotation and the management of your identity. And so you can have like Todd the person, Todd's company, Todd's pseudonym, and all these other things can all be managed in there, and then allow you to interact in such a way where people can say, no, this is definitely Todd. It was Todd's keys, at least. And, it can be attested to by Anil and by Kurt and whatever, and be like, no, I know that's Todd. And you start to create this identity graph, which then adds more weight to your identity. And but it's a big piece of the puzzle, and one that we've also been thinking about a lot.
I think that's such a core thing, right? The identity graph. It's something that I picked up from from watching the interviews with, what's his name? Todd. I keep forgetting his name, but he did a 12-part series interview with
Brian.
Yeah,
Charles.
with
you're
exactly.
incapable.
With-
you're incapable.
I'm
of
incapable because I'm
memorizing
always gonna say like some X-Men
X-Men.
character. Yeah,
Right.
Charles Xavier or something like that is what I'll
Right.
say. But he talked about identity in that series, and then his response, like Craig's response, was that identity is not just possession as everyone tries to pin it on him as. Like it's something that's built over time, right? Just like what you're saying with the whole identity graph. So I think it's super core to the whole thing.
Yeah, identity, including in the real world, in the meat space. Like, okay, who are you? Who actually knows? Like, if it's just my spouse vouching that I'm me, well, she has a conflict of interest for being honest in certain situations about it. So it's got to be your spouse and your neighbor and your garbage man and whatever, and be like, okay, that's definitely who he says he is, because all these people agree. But that's how you go get like a passport or a driver's license or whatever. You got to show up and be like, all right, here's my phone bill and my electric bill and my water bill and my, some other ID that some other government issued me already. And, they require multiple attestations.
There's even actually like you need two people that you've known for at least 5 or 10 years or something like that to attest to who you are. So that's actually the basis of it, is the other two people that you're going to loop into your identity. So it's a good point.
And that's going to be like part of deep in the Web3 ISP kind of thing, and the
crucial. Yeah, we want to be one of the major attesters too. Like, we want to say like, hey, we'll run whatever infrastructure necessary to validate these things. But also, if you're a corporate entity, like maybe you want Gorilla Pool to be one of the signers off on your corporate identity key, for example. And like, that's another service we can offer as a company, similar to, like right now,
a CA or something. Like a
essentially, yeah. Well, because we're going to need like notaries and like there's lots of weird infrastructure that kind of shows up in there too that we're happy to participate in.
Yeah,
cool, interesting. Look forward to 2026.
Yeah. We're pumped.
So you mentioned a little bit before we started the recording of some things that you're proud to not necessarily you're able to disclose them right now, but maybe if you could potentially tease a little bit about what is it about that is coming in 2026 from Gorilla Pool.
Honestly, it's like an everything thing. I mean, like our deck. It's funny because about 2 years ago we started mapping out what all could we be doing, or should we be doing? Should any miner be doing, right? And then we met in the Fort Lauderdale area. We brought the whole team out, and we all hung out for 4 days with a whiteboard, and it turned into, we ended up going back to the store and bought more whiteboards because our graph of stuff that we want to do was that much. And we had like 35 different things that we realized, okay, somebody has to do all of these things for this to actually be a robust economy. So everybody else is just thinking hobbies and meme coins and whatever. And that doesn't require a lot of infrastructure or a whole lot of thought. It just requires you to have a wallet and a DEX and liquidity, which you can fake the liquidity even. And so one of them is DEX. First of all, we were like, hey, we really need a DEX on BSV. Like we need, and not just not a fake one and not whatever, like it needs to be an open exchanging protocol that anybody can connect to. And then the liquidity can start to become native, because like thinking about like what's BSV's relationship with the big Bitcoin exchanges, like 2/3 of them hate us and will never list our coin again. And so it's like, okay, so we need to be eating our own dog food in that too. Like what if to get BSV, all you needed to do is download a wallet and then connect to that protocol. And then you could connect your credit card. And there was a way to take actual fiat currency digitally and buy BSV directly from the chain. And, that's solved a problem. And so we walked through the process for how to do all of that. And then once that's done, it turns into like, okay, who else can censor us? Who else can kill us? And one of the big ones is Amazon, which I mentioned briefly. The funny thing is like Amazon could probably take down the US government if they wanted to also. because like the US Navy uses AWS as like a big part of the backbone of their processing. And so it's like literally Amazon could be like, well, we're going to disconnect the comms between these ships. And I'm sure they have backup comms, but it would be real inconvenient for a while. And so we're trying to figure out how can we replace all of those things. And not just as Gorilla Pool. I don't want us to turn into Amazon also. I want these to be open protocol. I want a company like Tal to say, okay, we need to start running similar endpoints and these kind of things. Like and then I want other companies to see the opportunity. I would love for Antpool and Foundry to have a board meeting and be like, okay, guys, there's something serious happening. And like, we should probably start getting into this, because all of a sudden, like, it's not just the crypto stuff or the mining stuff or whatever. Like all of a sudden they're actually taking a serious dent out of cross-border settlement, OAuth. All of a sudden there's 15 million people using some social network through this client system that we don't understand, and like all this other stuff. Like that's when those other companies are going to start saying, okay, we really need to start to rethink our subsidy-based business model and our, coin go up forever business model. Because really, my kids are like murdering each other outside the door here. but also here's the other thing. The thing that really scares me is that, like, right now, companies like Gorilla Pool and Tal and whoever else is mining BSV, like, that's one thing. We're going to have to compete against Antpool and like, these people have a ton of hash power, but they're also in the same boat as us, because as soon as Google and Facebook and Amazon and these people start to see the chunk that all of us are taking out of it, imagine the mining and data center operations that a company like Google could bang out. So like, we may have to consolidate. Like, there might be a consolidation in 5 years of Gorilla Pool and Tal with Foundry and Antpool and all these other people to create a mega company just to keep a small piece of the pie against the whole network being operated by Google and Amazon and Facebook and whatever. Because if we're successful, that's what the level of competition is going to look like. And so I really see us as becoming, what I want Gorilla Pool to be is like, I trust, like, I want us to be the brand that never sold out, that never quit, that never changed our business model because, some venture capitalist waved $100 million check in our face or whatever. Like, I want us to stay a company that is still competing with, the 5 biggest companies in the world. I want us to be a Fortune 100 company because we never quit. And I think it's absolutely possible, because we're talking about disrupting trillions of dollars of economy in both money and data. So it's like the banks, the payment companies, all the underlying infrastructure of all of those things, but then also all the big data companies. So it's like, take everything from Silicon Valley and everything from Wall Street and London, and like, hey, we absorbed a sizable chunk of all of your businesses, and now we're, have a major seat at the big table. And that's what I think this looks like if we're successful.
And we're still don't being evil.
Right. Yeah. Right. I'm still gonna wear my Hawaiian shirt to the board meeting, and
just take your slogan down, and you're like, oh well, we'll be evil now.
Right. And they're like, well, super yacht sounds nice though.
Well, very ambitious.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, I'm going to ask you a harder question. Maybe, I've asked this to Craig, and I'm curious to know what your vision is on this, but like, what is the path to mass adoption with Bitcoin BSV? Is it going to be on the data side, or is it going to be on the money side of things? In my head, it's like, we have to get the money into people's hands. And again, I think primarily of Bitcoin as money right now. And I see that opportunity. I see it with the tokenization and whatnot, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like people need to have it first. And then once they have it in their hand, they see how easy or how cheap it is to transact, how quick it is to transact. And then they learn like, oh, you can also do this XYZ with it. Like, boom, it explodes. But if it's not in their hand in the first place, like, which way is it? Is it both, or what's your take on that? What's your vision around that?
I think it's whoever is shrewd enough to understand it first. Like I really don't care if it's Thailand putting their CBDCs on BSV. Then it's a monetary thing that all of a sudden makes it that much more profitable and brings up demand and whatever. Or if it's, maybe it's some IoT company that you've never heard of, but they're doing billions of dollars a year with like weird, automated factories or whatever. And for me, I kind of don't care. It doesn't really matter to me because you don't really need that much BSV necessarily to do any of these individual things. But even having like a mid-level company that is generating a lot of valuable transactions, they can be making their business a lot more efficient and earning a lot more money in fiat by using the underlying technology and not using a ton of BSV at the same time. And so I actually think mass adoption could be and will be slow for that reason, because there's 2.1 quadrillion sats in the world. And the people that are holding lots of BSV, I think, will benefit from us. I'm kind of glad it's only, 50 of us or whatever the hell it is that have any BSV. But those people, like the kind of, it's the meme that people talk about in BTC is like, oh man, if you have one coin, you're going to live in this level of the, Citadel space or whatever. Right. And like, I think that's sort of true, but I don't think it's going to be, I don't think we're going to have a meteoric rise like BTC did. I think it's going to be, slow and steady growth that all of a sudden you're going to realize like, oh wow, there's hundreds of big companies that are using this thing. And the blocks, I think the blocks will go from an average size of, whatever they are now, a few megabytes up to like, hey, the average block size is very steadily a gigabyte. And it's very steadily 10 gigabytes. And it's very steadily 100 gigabytes. And like, it just makes it slowly more profitable to mine. And I think it's going to look a lot like, the proliferation of telephone lines and that kind of thing, where all of a sudden it'll be like, in hindsight, you look at it and be like, well, in 1850, there were 10 telephone lines. And by 1900, there were millions or hundreds of millions of them. But that's still 50 years from, I'm 40. So if like by the time I'm 90, the world lives on a Bitcoin paradigm, like that's cool. But it's one of those things where I think we're a little bit talking to our children with this, with the real revolution, right? Like I think there's a lot of money to be made and a lot of success to be had on the way. But really, I think we're talking about the kind of people that, they're living in Manhattan real estate that their grandfather bought. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. Grandpa invested in the railroads and he did pretty well. Like he was worth $50 million when he died, but now we're billionaires just because of the momentum that just stayed and growed and stayed and growed. And so I think it's going to be a little bit like that. I don't think it's going to be nearly as sexy as like the whole BTC and crypto boom stuff, where all of a sudden it was like, holy crap, I made 50,000 X gains in 5 years. Like I think that's probably over, but I don't think we're going to lose. But I genuinely think it's going to be pretty slow and steady.
It's hard to imagine that though, like with there only being a finite amount, that there you see a trend line, and savvy investors they'll have seen BTC do what it did and go, I'm going to grab some. And there's not that many to grab. Like there's a lot of sats to grab, but there's not that many coins to grab. And
that's fair.
Like it depends on how long the default narrative can persist that it is, a scam coin kind of thing. But, if you saw, say, some big IoT company comes on or a small IoT company comes on and gets a massive head start against the big ones and starts to like win, and say an upstart AI company comes against OpenAI or a search provider or some things like that, then they'll change the current assumptions, the presuppositions, as you would.
I think so. I when I talk about like BSV being $100,000, I think that would be I think that could be a 10-year path. But I think if we're talking about $1,200, that's still what is it, a 60x move from here? Yeah, something like that. I mean, I'll take a 60x return in 2 years when people start to realize it, right? Like that's still a lot of money spilling in, a lot of people getting the light bulb turned on over their head, but it's still not a ton in market cap. So I think a lot the way that you see BTC, it did the same thing. It went from like $1 to 1,000 and then down to 200 and then sat for 2 years. And then it went up to, it did the zigzag thing, but it took 10 years for it to go from $1 to $100,000. And so, I'm still, when I'm talking about like ubiquity, I'm talking about, $10 million per coin kind of thing. I think it's a 50-year move for BSV, but we'll all be plenty well off when we're sitting at, 50 grand or whatever. Like that's going to make the lot of us that have been stacking, mining, building stuff out. Like there's, all of a sudden you're the guy who's, I'll put on a conference. I'll buy a highway and name it after my company, like that kind of thing. So I think I'm minimizing those steps that are going to feel like huge victories, but they're not the whole victory.
There is the argument though that every time BTC pumped a 10x or something, people go and look at it and they're like, what can you do with this? Oh, nothing. But if you get a 10x on something and the blocks are going up to a gig consistently, and then they're starting to move to 5 gig, and you're like, well, here's all the here's an index of all the people that are using a schema on here and doing IoT and doing agri-tech and doing genetic stuff. It changes the experience for that sort of more responsible investor that goes in and goes, wow, this is actually growing. So it can be hopium, it can be whatever, but I can imagine a more steady uptrend that doesn't have these big crashes down, because when it does crash down, there's still utility there rather than it being like just totally
precisely
BS.
If there's real economic demand, it'll look, I think, a lot more like the price of oil or something, where hey, the global economy runs on this stuff. It should never be zero. I guess it did go to like 0 4 or 5 years ago during the pandemic because of the damn derivatives traders. But
it's no one actually got the barrels. It was just like contracts being swapped around that someone just copped a big L.
Yes.
So I guess speaking of like that, in terms of we're talking about a commodity that underwrites the value of data and the value of transacting money. There's some big players that are the incumbents and have been putting up a pretty dirty fight. And where do you think they're at in that? Like, do you think they're sitting there going, oh, we've succeeded, or do you think they're eternally like vigilant, saying like we need to keep squashing this, or are they desperate? Where do you think that's the sort of the current appraisal of it is?
I think it depends which group you're talking about. Like if we're talking about Berkshire Hathaway, like they've been sitting in cash for 2 years because I think the economy is going to crash and like they want to buy it all out of the dumpster. But they've also missed out on 2 years of like massive growth that a bunch of companies have still been participating in. And now they're talking about like Fed rate cuts might, get cut significantly tomorrow and that kind of thing. And it's like, so what, Pump City again? And, so it's like all of this stuff. I think a lot of the economy, like too much of the economy is very, very fake. There's not a lot of productive people in the world. Most of the productivity is being done by a very small group of people. I think that AI is in something of a bubble, similar to the way that the tech bubble was 25 years ago. And, there's still a lot of money floating around, but that money is increasingly, paper thin, pardon the pun. But like, I look at somebody like, or I look at Berkshire Hathaway, and I think they're content to sit and wait. But then you look at like your Silicon Valley, like your Sequoia Capitals, who then own a stake in a bunch of other stuff, or your BlackRocks or whatever else. Who are the people that are trying to pump? Like the people that are trying to pump stuff, that's who's nervous, right? Guys are like, hey, you got to buy now. It's a revolution, man. And you're going to miss out. Like those people, like that's who's hot under the collar. And so, like your BTC group and stuff too. But looking at like big data, I thought there was a really interesting thing when Trump got elected. All of a sudden you had a bunch of the Silicon Valley old school insiders, like your Mark Andreessen, Mark Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel, like those kind of guys. Like they're all going on Joe Rogan's podcast and they're all talking about, I'm a libertarian now. Like I think this and that. Like, all of a sudden it's like first of all, no, you were a big Obama donor, and like you're all these things. Like you're this weird globalist lizard thing, and then now all of a sudden Trump's here, and you're trying to like signal to like, hey, don't kill me, essentially. And then, you know, Peter Thiel too. All of a sudden, like Peter Thiel is like the weirdest guy in the universe. If you actually look into what he believes and all this stuff, like now he's decided he's a Christian, and there's like this weird crew of like Silicon Valley Christians, and this is like the most atheist region in the country, and like they're all these like cyber tech bros, like, oh, I'm gonna put my soul on, you know, on the internet so I can live forever and all this stuff, and now they're all like turned into Christians and right wingers inside of 2 years, and I think that's them. First of all, showing that they have no real worldview that undermine or undergirds anything except for the like, hey, I got to ride the cultural wave to make sure that capital keeps going the way that I want it to and stuff. So like all of them seem very nervous to me because they're not doubling down on their business values, their moral values, their family value, like none of it. They're literally just like, hey, here's my new chameleon shirt. Yeah. And like, so I think a lot of them are feeling very nervous. But then a lot of the old school pillars of power, like the ones that you don't really think about, think about like the Catholic Church or the Eastern Orthodox Church. Like these were the most powerful people in the world 500 years ago. They're still very wealthy, but they're not had a lot of power really for a lot of years now.
Not overt power. You don't know how the system like traces back up because they're still the biggest landholders and
exactly.
You know, yeah.
But that's a little bit like my Berkshire Hathaway example, right? They're just like, look, we've got enough capital to just kind of hide. We're going to back up. We're going to hibernate for a while. We're going to let all this other stuff kind of pilfer out. And then all of a sudden you see like this new Pope is going and hanging out in Constantinople. But like, hey, let's recombine the Greek Orthodox and the Catholics. And like, we're talking about like the amount of money and land and power and all this stuff. Like if they were to reconsolidate power, like they have more money than most of the countries in the world. And so you could see like a weird shift on that kind of thing, the kind of dormant capital that people don't really think about. And then it also comes down to like weird sovereign wealth funds in places. Like you can even look at like the Harvard endowment is worth just billions and billions and billions of dollars. It's kind of tangled up in some things, but like a lot of people have a lot of power that they haven't flexed in a long time. And I think they're waiting for kind of a big changing of the guard. And I think a lot of that is getting ready to happen. I don't know what's going to set it off, but you know, there's people whispering about World War III and all this other stuff. There's a lot of cultural things that were not okay to talk about just 2 or 3 years ago that now all of a sudden, like whispers have turned into, we're having these people on our show and this and that. It's like, oh man, like the culture is shifting really hard. I don't know what it's going to look like in 2 years, but a lot of the people that have only recently become powerful and rich, like your Silicon Valley types, they seem like they're getting real squirrely. So I think we're ripe to kind of zoom in with a tool that can clean up a lot of chaos when the world starts to get really unpredictable again. And we can be like, hey man, fixed protocol, scalable systems, sound money, own your own data, like control your nugget because everybody else is not sure who's in control of any of the nuggets. So, yeah.
Yeah, to me, it really feels like that there's that fixed protocol and an informational commodity is it's really the only escape life raft that I can see, because otherwise, you're looking at down that and you're looking at say the Orthodox and the Vatican joining together, and you look at the way that the Vatican structured, and then you look at Australia, you know, it was founded as a Protestant imperial, it was a set of colonies, and then they federated. Yep. But they federated under that faith of a Protestant imperial faith, and then shortly after there was basically banking interests. We inherited debts from the United Kingdom. The banking interests came over the top and said, you need to pay these debts. They used sort of their proxy people to come and, you know, flex and said, yeah, you guys are now under the thumb. And you saw a change in like ticker symbols. You saw a change in the crowns. So instead of the imperial crown, it moves to the Vatican's St. Edward's crown. And so even in 2019, leading up to, 2019, I think it was, the Pope called in all movable property. So he said, basically, everything's coming back home. We're no longer just providing the credit that we did. Debts are starting to have to be paid. And then you see shenanigans. You saw, 2020, the economics market changed dramatically. Debt went through the roof. Inflation's going up. Oil going down to negative. Like who copped the L there?
Right.
It seems to be like the Great Reset, the fourth industrial revolution, where it seems there's moves going on. I would say there's almost seems to be like a dismantling of the monarchy in England.
Yeah.
Sort of turning them into a historical relic rather than any kind of seat of authority that's a defender of the faith and doing things like that. So I think we're not privy to it, but if you're paying attention and reading between the lines, you're seeing that there is big changes, and we might be moving from even like an east to west paradigm as a Hegelian dialectic in its own right, and saying like China, America being like, oh, we're scared of China, but China's been really under the thumb of the Vatican since the Opium Wars, and it has its sort of nodes there of the ports and such, which were kept by under those treaties and such that they had after those wars. That Hong Kong and Macau or whatever and a few others were pretty much Vatican territories, and they would just run the extraction of resources out of China through those hubs and profit off of it. And
people don't realize how long there's been a very religious war going on. This is the same thing in the U.S. Like that's what the War of 1812 was with the U.S. Like it wasn't the king that declared war. It was the Bank of England declared war on the U.S. for debts from the American Revolution. And so like there's so much crazy stuff about like how a repossession to the Bank of England ended up working. And it was the same kind of thing where it's like,
the Bank of England is not necessarily even the Bank of England.
Right.
It was set up there by people that came and colonized England, and then set up that and printed their money and said, okay, you can sort of run on our coins or tokens or whatever for a little while. And so go ahead.
I just wanted to say, like, what a lot of people don't realize is that what you think of as your nation is a parentheses inside of a parentheses inside of a bigger parentheses. And ultimately it's like, well, who holds the note, right? It's like, man, that's a conversation.
It's like, Bravos in Game of Thrones or whatever. And so the US in the Civil War, who came through with the money, like who won it, who didn't win it, but who have the money to like repair afterwards and spin up an administration. And an administration is, oh yeah, I'm an admin, and you're like you're dealing with administration, or it's a term for a bankruptcy administration when you're coming in there and responsibly sort of managing the extraction of whatever there's of value left.
Exactly.
And so the US, that's what when I said that the Australia became occupied in 1908, the Great White Fleet sailed around the Commonwealth nations, and guns trained and flags up, and people, it was like said, oh, it was a backroom deal between Curtin and Eisenhower or whoever it was, and they said, oh, it's a display of military might, but under sort of protocols of war and such, if you're sailing into a territory with your guns up and your flags up, it can mean a declaration of war, and you don't need to say that they're under martial law, but they are. And you look at correlates. So Hague 4 was drafted in 1907. This was in 1908, and it defines the terms for you to go and get paid for what the debt that you're owed. So that Article 55 and 56 talk about the usufruct, getting first use of the mineral wealth, the forestries, the fisheries, the agriculture. So it's kind of like Australia's sitting there, just sort of the people came together and federated and said, we're now a self-governing colony. And then the US goes, well, it's not really the US, it's this mercenary sort of army that, you know, the creditor of the US administration funds sails around and says, you know, what about that money you owe us? We're just going to sit here and, you know, sell off all your timber, all your, you know, we're going to mine the joint and everything.
Right.
And who was it who bailed out was it the French who bailed out the America in the Civil War?
I mean, they came in militarily, but I think the French have always been an arm of the Vatican themselves.
Yeah, the Normans and
yeah.
So you guys kind of fell under that, and you know, you got your eagle on there, which is the Roman eagle, and Mexico's got its eagle on there as well, and it's kind of like another outpost of the Roman.
There's a huge argument to be made that Rome never ceased to exist. So anybody with their marble buildings and their eagles and their all of that is still very much under the Roman banner. Include, you know, look at these corporations. Like City of London is still a Roman corporation. You know, it's like people don't understand
Washington,
this
DC.
history. Right, it's all of it. And
I've heard it called as the tri-sovereign states, and it's like the military wing is Vatican and is Washington DC. The financial wing is City of London, and the spiritual wing is you know, Vatican DC. Yeah, and they, you know, all roads lead to Rome.
Right.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So that begs the question: do we just start our own Bitcoin country? Is that basically the plan here?
Well, it's a little bit. I mean, that's kind of the dream, right? Because it's, you know, nobody wants to be a serf on a plantation, but almost all of us are. And
that's what we are, yeah.
And the only way to bypass it is to completely undermine the system, right? Like, because if they can't control your actions, and they can't control your communication, and they can't control your money, then what are they leveraging against you other than violence, right? Then the next thing is like, well, just, you know, mass slaughter until all these inconvenient Bitcoiners go
revolution.
away, right? Right. Yeah. We'll fix it. But it's a rough one. But it's why a little bit, you know, you got to get people that are really good at playing that game and understanding what game they're playing, which is why, you know, I've called it out since day one. Every time, you know, New York Life Insurance says, like, yeah, we want to be a seed investor in Blockstream, I'll be like, hold on, isn't that like a major conflict of interest to have that kind of thing happening? But, you know, people look at it and they're like, man, I'd rather just be middle management on the plantation rather than try to, you know, push the whole revolution, right? And the thing is it is possible. The people that are really, really in charge, they took it from somebody, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be this super convoluted, complex governance structure and debt structures, and again, like derivatives of derivatives of derivatives, managing derivatives of derivatives. And it's just like, it's this insane system when you actually look at it. But you have to come up with something that systematically replaces the whole thing. It can't just be, you know, hey, it's Monero, man, it's secret money, right? Like it doesn't solve the systemic problem. It solves one little aspect of one thing, and it doesn't scale. So it's just like, okay, cool. Like pirate radio is like a really cool way to, you know, say interesting stuff to 100 people, but that's not going to push the revolution either. So yeah, I mean but I think Todd said it really well, like better than I could on some of the details. But like that is what we're up against. Like, we are up against the people that actually control the entire planet, and you don't even realize, like, you're paying taxes to your local tax authority, but your local tax authority is just a affiliate branch of the thing that's actually in control.
Yeah, like we got the IMF Act in Australia, and now your tax is just a performance on the bonds that you get when you're borrowing money from the foreign, you know, and it's like you're just, you know, guaranteed to be paying that much for your lifetime over the, you know, on the performance of the loan that you're getting. But there is, like, you know, you're talking about starting a new Bitcoin country, but there's also the idea of like resurrecting things that from the past that were the jurisdictions or the you know, the estates that had more rights and such over, you know, with the Protestant, you know, revolution, the Glorious Revolution in the UK, saw them, they had certain declarations in the Bill of Rights 1688 that said, anyone with an oath of obedience to the papacy is excluded from holding office and can't be in there. And there's been this sort of dance of, King James sort of got rid of it. Then some of his grandson or whatever was already back to being under the Vatican thumb.
Right.
And then William came in and, flogged a few people and whatever happened there. And then, he was basically shoved that Bill of Rights from the Parliament to
Right.
like ratify to sort of give, certain things to the people, and they were given under like even a non-obstant clause, which means it can't be taken away even by the monarch. And
Right.
so there is, I don't know when the chronology doesn't really work so much into US because you were already, going out in your own.
That was his own thing.
Yeah, whereas Australia, we inherited
the problem the problem with Americans is that Americans think they're free, and they have no idea. They have no idea.
That's bad.
No, it's really bad. Well, and it's like, so everybody's just like, this is why I don't vote, for example. Like, it's just like I won't participate in my own enslavement, right? Yeah. And so, like, I look at that and say, like, look, the most important thing that I can do is focus on the Bitcoin stuff, have as many kids as possible, raise them to be as based as I can make them be, and do the same thing, right? Like, we need lots of people that think extremely independently to say, well, I didn't consent to any of this, and continue to optimize and revolutionize these things, because like, I don't want my kids to live on a plantation, even if it's a pretty good one, right? Because ultimately that's both the beauty and the terror of the United States. It's a pretty good plantation. And so it's like, well, why am I rocking this boat?
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, it's like, it's not just us. Like, we can become a terrible place to live very quickly. And it's also a terrible place to live for lots of other people in the world who we should be aligning with to say, hey, we could all be doing business together instead of having this crazy militarist, like, the predatory colonizer relationship with. And, Bitcoin is a big tool in that, because it covers so many things. Like, it is ultimately a tool that systematically replaces all of those major problems, which is, again, data transmission, communications, money, contracts, property, and all of those things, to then go back and say, hey, who actually does own these things if we get rid of the stacks of things that are like, hey, this was taken by these people, and who's owed what to who, and all these other things, and get back to, hey man, I'm not just some debt asset from which you can leverage whatever else to pay interest back to this bank or that bank and all these other things. It's just like this insane system is really hard to understand, but Bitcoin properly implemented actually becomes very easy to understand in a very practical way. I mean, like, hey, the things I own, my actual intellectual property, my physical property, my money, my commodities, my identity documents, all of my familiar, like, it's all right here. It's right here with my private keys, and anyone can prove it. Anyone can see it. I can show anybody that I didn't give it away. I didn't lose it. I didn't sell it. I can show if it was stolen, and all of that's public. And the reason that all of this was able to be done is because when a lot of these deals were made, 95% of the world was illiterate. They didn't know how to read. They couldn't practically communicate to other people. They didn't have a way to say, like, hey, I don't know, a bunch of people rode in and took us over. It just was like, I don't know, what do I even do? Who do I petition for help? It just wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin properly implemented allows all of that to work. And I think the internet was created to be that thing. If you talk about like who the cypherpunks were and stuff, like, they built the internet too because they were trying to solve these problems. And then the internet got co-opted, and then built Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin got co-opted. But it's like, we got to take these things back. These are our things. These are our tools. And if we can succeed in that, it becomes a world where the ability to travel and the ability to do business and all of these things don't require a million layers of permission and all this other nonsense.
Yeah, it should just be the bare minimum, and when any order is passed at you, say like anarchy doesn't say like no rules. It says like demonstrate that your authority that you're presuming over me is like legitimate. And
where's the contract?
Yeah. So it's sort of like, okay, yeah, you want to have the rights as a subject of this country, but you're an equal beneficiary of the trust, the public indissoluble discretionary trust, which is the Commonwealth of Australia, and you are our public servants. And so when you're coming down, like if you can use Bitcoin to actually display the line of authority for how it gets into an entity or a government or an executive body, and then they're passing these things down, and you're like, yeah, it all checks out, that's legitimate, but and you can use it for documentation. So like, regardless of the power that put them in place, if things were done under fraud and under coercion, like the contract is void under statute of frauds and things like that, which they've ratified. Both parties have kind of ratified, and they're obligated to do it. So some of these things, like the $30 trillion debt, in Australia, what we got, 10 trillion or something like that. It's not necessarily even real, because the debt was blown up by the people that came over the top of it, then spun up an RBA, Reserve Bank of Australia, spun up their notes, gave the Governor General a $200,000 pay rise, which trickles down through all public servants and just keeps blowing up the debt more and more and more, which means you still can't pay off your debt. And you're like, well, it's not generated legitimately, like it's not, it's done under a fraud, and so we don't actually owe the same debt that you feel like we do. And when you've done things that can be constituted as violations of war, like conventions for warfare on land, or Geneva Convention, or Nuremberg offenses. And people who can, in a fog of war, they'll cut comms as the first step, break up people's ability to organize and such.
For sure.
But with a Bitcoin protocol, and when you can organize information and data and have data integrity, and say through an identity system, you can use that to self-determine to an estate that's legitimate, and it has real rights.
Prove your identity, prove your credentials, prove your property, like all of these things like that. You can't just erase it from the blockchain. So it's super powerful.
Our land title in Australia, it's like held into like a consolidated revenue fund, which is given as the performance, as collateral for credit from China or something like that. So no one actually has their land title. It's probably something similar in America as well.
Probably.
And they let you be a tenant in usufruct, and you pay your rates and you do your things, and you get to like exist on that land. But at any point, when they really want the land, they can come and grab it, and they can do things like, you had floods through Lismore, several years ago, and they did this Reconstruction Corporation, which come in and has the power, to compulsorily acquire any property that it wanted and kick you out of it and say it's now in a flood zone. You can't be in here anymore, and just takes all the property, because as much as you had a bit of a record that says you own the property, it's just a record in a third party's database, and it's not your title, and you can't, it was no longer indefeasible evidence of your ownership. So you need to like reinstantiate the title, but reinstantiate it under the line of authority that's like, we're not registering it with Property Corp, we're registering it with, basically it would have been formerly like the parish, under and then with the council, but the council was aldermen who were members of the community that have sort of were duly elected, not just
actual like like a mutual hierarchical contract where
and checks and balances, and always with an alignment to a faith and a scripture as a set of law that had bits in it that said slavery is not on.
All right, there is the law. I'm very much the same thing. I'm a Protestant myself, and it's like, hey, we do live in a kingdom, and it ain't yours. So
I'm gonna be honest and call something out here, because I think that there is two kind of narratives in the BSV space that you're speaking on, one that is not so popularly spoken in the BSV space, and I'm of that side. Like, I'm very much resonating with what you're saying. And you can obviously tell Todd is very much in that camp too, right?
Yeah.
But like, you know, when I was getting deeper into the BSV space, one of the things that really clashed, me coming from like BTC, thinking that was a thing, that was the original Bitcoin. I'll be honest, like the narrative that attracted me was this like opt out of this system, because I understood the system was broken. And so there's this ability to opt out. But then coming into the BSV space, the thing that kind of like it was surprising, because I was like, oh, so this is like pro-government and like you know, compliance and all this sort of thing. And that's the two kind of like what's the word here?
Dichotomy?
That's, I don't know if it's narratives or sort of camps, if you will, but like,
yeah,
there's two sort of like ideas happening that I see inside of the BSV space. You can definitely say BTC is like clearly on that one side of like libertarian, you know, we don't need the government. BSV at its surface level will sound very much like, you know, pro-government compliance, where, you know, that's one of the features of the system. It's very compliant, all sorts of stuff. We got, you know, people working with the government for policy and stuff like that. So you definitely have that there. And especially from the angle of like, we're trying to attract enterprise users to come on, like it's obviously super important to have those features. But like, how did those two things exist in the same space? And you know, are they opposing forces, or how does that work in your eyes?
So I think it's actually flipped too. Like, I think there's a narrative, like there is a fake libertarian narrative in BTC, and they're all just corporate shills. Yes. And then in BSV, I think it's a bit of a fake corporate narrative, and we all actually want to you know, take one step back and be like, oh, by the way, like we're enforcing the Magna Carta, you know, and like it's a
kind of Trojan horse.
It is a Trojan horse. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is Bitcoin is a Trojan horse. It always was. Like, you know, when you read Satoshi Nakamoto, everybody misunderstood Satoshi from day one. Like, I don't think anybody really got it. Like any of the early people, like a lot of people are kind of picking at the fray and whatever, but like nobody really understood what was being given to everybody. And truly, it is that like reversion back to actual property rights, like the real property rights from their source, and like this emergent commodity that is based entirely on the fact that you worked for it. And if you worked for it, it's yours and nobody can take it from you. And like that's the novel use of the cryptography, and the fact that all things are distributed through proof of work, and that ultimately the truth is determined by the most proof of work, and like all of those kind of principle things that underlie Bitcoin. They should be, anyways, they should be teaching people the basic set of values that they've missed in this world, in that we live in a very proof of stake world. You live in a like, well, daddy was rich and then I went to Wharton and now I'm the president, you know, it's like whatever. And like, but Bitcoin isn't that. It's literally the king today might not be the king tomorrow if he fails to provide the most value to the system. And that is a principle that I don't know that you can find anywhere else. Like maybe in an Amish community or something, where it's like, hey man, if we don't build the barn and fill it with food, like we're gonna all freeze and starve to death. And like that's a very real reality for those people. And like Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin is absolutely that Trojan horse that starts to re-educate people, to remind people of where we came from and what property ownership actually looks like. And you know, and if you listen to Craig talk about this stuff, like he pokes a lot at these things. He'll talk about like, you know, Black's Law, you know, and he'll get into John Locke and a lot of these things that like, man, if you've never read Locke and you don't know the history of like, you know, King James and a bunch of these things, are like Cromwell and the Protectorate, like just all this stuff. Like if you don't know that those things happened, you don't have any context for why any of this stuff is even interesting. But if you do understand that history, you start to realize why a lot of these little things are the way that they are. And then you start to realize like, oh man, in order to really participate in this system, it it brings back all this stuff that we're built out of. Like that is where we come from in every regard. And if we can get that back, it's everything. And you got all these people now. It's funny when you listen to like podcasts now, people will be like, yeah, I don't know, like all these nations have a flood story. And then there was always like a hero that showed up after the flood to like re-teach people agriculture and architecture and, you know, all these things that were necessary to rebuild society. And every society has its story. And it's like, so we've been through this before. We went from having a grand society to having it completely wiped out. And then there were people or a person or a family, you know, we don't know who it was or exactly what, but some of the brilliant people survived and they seeded it back. And then at some point, you know, the bad people basically got in charge again. Like the people that want to own a plantation, right? Like the people that see us as slaves, see us as an asset for them, you know? And it's like, it is the worst way to look at another human being is to be like, how can I leverage that person for my benefit forever? And so, but
and his kids and their kids' kids.
Exactly. And like there's a big cycle, and I don't know if it's a 10,000 year cycle or 100,000 year cycle or whatever, where you know you get like a society that's built on the principles of like self-sovereignty and property, and therefore, you know, it's like who built Baalbek or built the pyramids or built, you know, like all these things. It's like we don't know, but for somehow there was a coordination globally that was able to build architecture that we cannot build today because we don't have the technology. And so there's something there that we could re-harvest. Like maybe we'll rebuild Atlantis with Bitcoin, right? And the first principle there is that you have to be able to, when you invent something, you have to be able to put it somewhere where it can be given to the right people and it can't be erased by the bad people, right? And if we can continue to do that, imagine what we could create open source, right? It's like, what if we open sourced free perpetual energy and, you know, like all these other things to the point where like they can't kill Tesla and they can't kill every guy that figures out how to extract power and just have water be the exhaust and like all these kind of things. And like, if all of a sudden that you can make it that stuff cannot be censored, we can live in a golden age to the degree of which we can't even fathom. And so that's the Trojan horse we're pushing in. We're saying, hey, you want to run your stupid fiat currency on our thing for 10,000 times cheaper than your whole system right now? Like, pay us to do that. We'll get really wealthy in the meantime, but we're also integrating our virus onto your shitty program.
Yeah. It's like you're running your CBDC on here and you still got 100x overhead than just using sats. So eventually people come in there and they run the CBDC with all the rules. And then it's like, but I can just atomically swap into sats and skip all that. Cool. Like that's where it's going.
Just go there. Yep.
And yeah, I see that. It's quite interesting, not in a fundamentalist or something like that, but just seeing in the world of allegories and the world of like sort of like fractal allegories or fractal stories and such, like where we're converging to in this time, and you know, blockchain as existing there, and you know, the Tower of Babel fell, and we all were scattered into disparate communication protocols. But now is there something to that, like rebuilding a shared substrate as an informational commodity that allows interoperating of all these different estates? Because I think that the de jure state here is a Protestant imperial realm with the Commonwealth, but it's separate to those that use Mecca as their stone of foundation. Like they're different kingdoms. They're not when we can interoperate, but I don't have say over how they do their cultural customs and such, and that's fine. Like, you want a diverse world that has that, and you can choose to go and live where you want. But yeah, you want each one to be efficiently able to deal with one another. You want evidence to be logged. You want sort of accountability, transparency. And that's all the things that this provides. And to me, it sort of becomes, if you can look at, say, eliminating 15%, the 15% of all value created is lost to the inefficiencies around fraud. So if you can eliminate that 15% or reduce it by an order of magnitude and get 15% year-on-year growth, you're moving into like mega prosperity, and you can use it to measure all these intangible things and actually like granularly bring data to market, participate in, have way more integrity in the scientific process, so that a study has data provenance from every data set in it.
Exactly.
Who are the interests who are funding it? Like that changes the world significantly. And to me, it does feel more like a heavenly realm.
Right.
Like, are we bringing about something there? That's what's like exciting to me, is not getting too stuck in the meat space side of things, but what allegories are being fulfilled in some way, some metaphor of themselves. And I'm excited
I think that. I think that's, for somebody that believes in, like biblical timelines and covenants, it's like God created a covenant with Adam, and was fulfilled in Jesus Christ. But ultimately what the end looks like is the merging of heaven and earth. Like, we are told that that's what the end, that's the actual end goal of the kingdom, is the merging of heaven and earth, resurrection of everybody, the perfection of our bodies, and all of these things. And it's like, okay, so we are talking about a glorious, fixed everything kingdom. That is what we are told by our creator that the end looks like. And so and it's like, okay, well, by what vehicle does that all happen? And
sounds like it needs a fully scalable blockchain as a substrate there.
Well, it's right now, it's like, our direct communication with the eternal is the thing that separates us right now. Like, we are stuck in a time paradigm, and God doesn't have that paradigm. Like, God is a timeless being. We're stuck in time. We're stuck in linear time, but he has, the fractal, the ability to see it in multiple dimensions. Right. And like, okay, well, by what means do those things get merged? Like, how does that even work? And it's like, well, we got to change all measuring sticks. We got to, it's like all of these things, but like, then what? What does it look like to have a perfected, incapable of destruction body in a kingdom that is the merge of heaven and earth? What do we do then? Right?
That's
it's like,
good.
It sounds all right. Yeah. But like, there's a lot of stuff that's not clear about the then what, and it's like, we don't know. We might be the people ushering in that kingdom, or we might just be wrong about everything. But it's,
well, say, like, a lot of people, you go around society and there's vandalism, and there's a lot of people do wrong because they believe others are doing wrong, and they've sort of lost faith in a common venture that you're all putting your best efforts into. And if you fix the bookkeeping, so you can sort of see, like, that's where all the money went. I don't. Everyone here talks crap about the council. Oh, they're so corrupt. They just lost $2 million to an AI scam. They're bastards. But if you can see the books and you can see like there's no capacity for them to do that, then you build trust in them, and you start to like, okay, cool. They're doing their best. It's just a clunky sort of system, and you can that changes the presuppositions that people are operating with, where if you think everyone else is just trying to get their interests met first, you'll be likely to try and get yours. Whereas if you shift and go, we're all working together, it's there's going to still be you'll fall over and you'll break your leg. It's like, not that's not perfect. It's just the situation that allows you to deal with accidents. There's support there, and it's blah blah blah. So that's kind of a vehicle, a way that I can see it, that's not too dressed in like woo, magic or whatever. It seems like it's sort of a somewhat rational mechanism to that a metaphor could be used to describe, a transition to a vastly superior,
For sure.
state for society.
Yep. No, and I think it starts with people having access to the truth, and that's what Bitcoin gives us.
Yeah, and it persists through time. Like it's
right.
Yeah.
It doesn't get lost. It doesn't get erased. It doesn't get some general or some CEO or some bank administrator can't just say, let's change the calendars and mix this up, right?
Leap years.
Right. At this block, I owned this, and this happened, and that happened, and can't rewrite all the blocks. That's the beauty of it. I should wrap. My wife. I need to hang with the kids for a little bit before bedtime. Do you have a final question or anything else I can do for you before we go?
That's all on my end. I'd just love to hear, your closing thoughts on what you wish people understood about Bitcoin that they may not know.
The Bitcoin is integratable into everything. Almost every interaction that you have with any person, place, or thing can be made better if there is a Bitcoin integration into it. It is designed as such a low-level general purpose tool so that it can easily integrate into really complicated things and really simple things. And then they can all be put on that substrate. There doesn't have to be secret databases and weird backups and all this other, just shells and shells and shells of administrators and third party administration is itself like a gigantic scam, and all of it can be outsourced directly to the public ledger, and it can be managed by processes that anybody can audit, and it really builds a world that is the kind of world that we can really be proud of. And I'm tired of, living in a world where I have to have, weird animosity situations with people because of their ethnicity or their nationality or their religious background or their whatever else. And it's like, we're so good at putting people into buckets and generalizing things and saying, well, you're from here and look like this and whatever. And so we're some kind of enemy. And in reality, almost all of us would be friends with each other if we were sitting across the table from each other, sharing food and trying to actually understand each other. There's not that many bad people on earth that want us to be in discord with each other. And Bitcoin fixes that too. And so, but not just Bitcoin, some of the practical ways to do better, I think for people that aren't technical, aren't devs, aren't whatever, like make yourself marriageable. Find a really good spouse, have lots of kids, raise them to work hard for things that aren't for them. Like have your kids learn to build the kingdom, and it'll make it that much better and faster that we get to live in the kingdom. And that's
the only thing that will.
It's the only thing that will.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's like I just wish someone else would make things better for me.
Right. Yeah. Don't wait for somebody else to do it, which is one of my big criticisms of a subset of the BSV community are the when is somebody going to do something for me? And it's like, bro, do it yourself or go do something else.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, Kurt. It's been great to chat. I've been keen to talk about some of those things with you for a long time, and
absolutely,
we got to do it on air instead of just in a private situation. So hopefully, some more people can benefit from the wealth of information you got locked inside and perspectives on things. So thanks a lot for coming on. Really appreciated it, and
let
us know. I'm looking forward to hearing Gorilla Pool's 2026, seeing things release, and when you got more clearance to share some of the things that you want to share, feel free to reach out and come back on and
sounds good.
Shill away.
Sounds good.
And I'll just say, Kurt, I didn't actually get to say this to you, but it was because of your interviews that you've been doing, like from the beginning. It was like you that brought me into this community over time, over years, right? So I'm like kind of honored to have you on the show and to be able to interview you. And I think if it wasn't for your early pioneering in the space and everything that you've done in the space, like I don't know where I'd be, and a lot of the people in this community. So I think, you know, I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself, and I believe a lot of people in the community, for everything that you've done for this community. And you know, I think you really are a great example of exactly, you know, what we need to strive to be, in terms of be the change that you want to be. If you want to see something done, you know, build that company, do it yourself, kind of thing. And you know, so thank you for, you know, everything you've done in this space. It's been,
well, thank you.
impactful.
I mean, that makes my day. You know, when people tell me I'm the reason they got into BSV, I'm always a little bit like, am I saying thank you or sorry? But,
right.
But
No, it's all good. It's all good here. It's all
means
good
a
here.
lot.
Yeah,
It
I'm
really means a
thankful.
lot. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good stuff, guys. Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool, great.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.